Hello and welcome to the All About Angling Fishing podcast. My name's Dan, and as ever, I will be your host today. And today's guest is one and only Rob Hughes. Rob, how are you?
Yeah, very well, mate. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for joining us, mate. I realise you're a busy man, and you're actually joining us from the bank today, aren't you? For those that aren't watching.
Yes, yeah. Well, if you are watching, you'll see that I've got a field behind me, but I'm just going to turn you around and see if you can see my view. I'm at an incredible fishery called Bishop's Bowl. It's like nowhere else. So that's me brollied up overnight. It's an old quarry, so you can see the cliffs on the far side. The water is absolutely crystal clear, which is one of the key reasons that I've been brought here. I've been diving today, looking at various different things, but there are some very nice carp in as well. Really, really good looking things. So I've decided to stay on for the evening and fish a little bit, but I'm hanging back from the edge because it does drop quite deep quite quickly. So right hand rod and left hand rod are only about a rod length out, a rod length either way. So hence the reason I'm sitting back.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So you've been working there all day as such, and you've just sort of decided to stay on and see what happens.
Yes, I live down in the southwest. So I live in the southwest. So it's a long way to come out up country. So if I come up, I try and do 2 or 3 things at once. And the weather was looking good. The fishing here were glorious, and I thought, well, we'll do the dive, and then I'll stay on and do a night.
Yeah.
So
fantastic.
And it's a non-work fishing thing, which is really good. It's actually for me for no pressure other than just fishing.
I mean that brings me on quite nicely to our sort of first topic, really. Obviously, you're a broadcaster. People know you from BT Sports on the Bank and so on and so forth. You're a journalist, amongst other things. Obviously, you're involved with Carp Team England. Do you actually get much of a chance to get out and fish for yourself as it is, or not?
No, not much at all. If the truth be known, I work in fishing 7 days a week, but that can be organising, it can be filming, it can sometimes be fishing. There's a reasonable amount of fishing that I do in front of camera, but there's a lot of producing television programmes, editing. I work as an ambassador for the Angling Trust, so in the recent coronavirus issues with lockdown, there was quite a lot of work to be done there, looking at how we can get back to fishing. In addition to that, I work with a couple of charities as well, doing various different things, trying to get people back on the straight and narrow. So everything I do is fishing related in some way, shape or form. And the only problem with that is that it means I get very little time to actually fish myself.
Yeah.
So, but that's not a complaint, because I have got the best job in the world. Because a bad day for me sometimes is out on the bank not catching, and that's not really a bad day, is it?
No, not really. I must admit, I'm not jealous at all, obviously. But some may say that yours is the ultimate job, really. Being able to surround yourself in fishing in the way you do. Many people would dream of that. So, fair play.
I'd agree with them completely. I think if it came to a job swap, the only person that I would consider swapping a job with is either probably Jeremy Clarkson might be one, because I love cars. But other than that, the Top Gear thing is good. But other than that, I wouldn't swap my job for the world, because it's just, fishing has been my life for such a long period of time.
Yeah.
You know what it's like, and everybody watching this will know what it's like. If it's in your blood, it's in your blood. You can't do anything about it. You love it that much, and I've been lucky enough to end up working in it. But it's a very varied job as well. So, today was diving, tonight is fishing, tomorrow is filming, back end of the week is editing. Yesterday was doing paperwork and magazine features. So whilst it's all related, it is very much still work.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, you must have to work to, quite tight deadlines in, certain areas of it, and then obviously trying to fit your family life around that, and then everything else. It must be, quite a lot of pressure in a way.
It's just like any job. It doesn't matter what the subject of the job is. I quite like gardening as a release from everything. Particularly, I love cutting lawns. That sounds daft, but cutting lawns is great, because when the lawnmower is going and you're just pushing the lawnmower up and down or sitting on it, nothing else matters. It's too noisy to do anything, and I really, really enjoy cutting lawns. Now, there's going to be gardeners and landscape gardeners out there that don't like going to work.
Yeah, no.
Yet for me, I absolutely love it.
I know. Well, you touched on it then. You love cars. I'm actually a mechanic by trade. When I first got into it, absolutely loved them. Now, couldn't care less if I saw another one. When you're sort of working on 10, 15 cars a day, they just become another car, which is a shame really, because, I really enjoyed it. But now it is what it is. It gets me to and from work, and that's that.
Yeah, you like cars because you presumably like driving originally, and you like what cars were about. And then when you get into the nitty gritty of it, and it's a little bit like me, I got it in the angling world because I love angling.
Yeah.
But when you get into the nitty gritty, the business, the politics, all of these things, it's a very, very different thing.
Yeah.
I'm just noticing that I'm in a black shirt and a fairly dark background, and it's getting darker. So I'm gonna retire to the bivvy and stick a light on. That might make things a little bit easier for us all to see each other.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Bear with me for a second, everyone.
Nah, you're all right.
Just before it goes dark, I'll show you the pitch.
Here we go.
This is it. I'm fairly light overnight. This is quite a big. It's very dark now. Light up here. There we are, everyone. Can you see that? There we go. That's a little bit better.
Get in there. Does
that work?
Yes. It's better than it was, mate. It's better than it was.
It looks like one of those weird levitating heads now, doesn't it? You've actually joined me on a Queen film set. We're recording the latest Queen song.
Do you know the words to Bohemian Rhapsody, Rob?
I don't. Oh, I tell you what, 1,000,001 mosquitoes just flown in here now. That is bang out.
Sorry, mate. So, as you mentioned there, you've been diving all day. Is diving something you was into before fishing, or is it something you've sort of brought with you, or how did that come into it?
As a kid, I loved doing a bit of snorkeling. You know what we're like. Before you started fishing, you loved water. Everybody watching this will say exactly the same thing as well. Part of the reason we get into fishing is because we love water, we love nature, we love all of these things. And when I was a nipper, I used to swim around with a face mask on, looking at stuff. But as far as scuba diving is concerned, I only got into it because I wanted to progress and learn more about fishing, and carp fishing in particular. So, I talk to quite a lot of other divers. I've been doing it for 20 odd years now. So I talk to quite a lot of other divers, and they all talk about how great the visibility is when they go out on coral reefs, and how they've seen magnificent wrecks, and how they've seen some fantastic colourful fish, and all sorts of things like that. No interest whatsoever.
No.
Give me a freezing cold, muddy pond in England where I can probably see a foot if I'm lucky. And if I'm finding out about carp, then that's it. But today, to be fair, we were doing match fishing. So I was out with a guy called Jamie Hughes. If anybody's into the match fishing world, you know who Jamie Hughes is. He's won Fishmania 3 times. He's just an immensely talented angler. And I was out with him, and we were looking at bomb and pellet fishing, which accuracy, casting, feed ratios, but a lot of that applies to us as well.
Yeah.
But while I was out, I always have a little scoot around the pond everywhere. So I saw loads of carp. Yeah. Loads and loads and loads of carp. They swim up to me. Some of them come up and have a little swim around.
Wow.
Some hang around for a while. Some look and disappear. Some hang around in the distance.
Yeah.
Saw a pike asleep as well today. That was quite cool. Right. I've never seen a pike lying on the bottom asleep.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of the time you see that when fish sleep, a lot of the time they'll hang, so they're not particularly vertical. So pike normally about the flattest.
Yeah.
Carp sleep a lot.
Right.
But this pike was flat out on the deck.
Wow.
I woke him up. I'll put some photographs on my page. I do an Underwater Wednesday thing.
Yeah.
So every Wednesday there's various different things on there, but I'll put the old pike up and a little bit of a carp film up next Wednesday.
So you obviously do learn quite a lot when you're under the water. To see him from a carp's eye point of view, it must be a game changer, really, for you, is it? Or
well, it's the singular most important thing, I think. Understanding what's going on below the surface.
Yeah.
Whether that's how the fish are feeding, how much of your food they're eating, how they're behaving, where they're eating. If you can understand what they're doing, you're in a much, much better position to catch them. And there's a warfare strategist, Sun Tzu, who wrote The Art of War. He's a famous Chinese war strategist. And in The Art of War, one of the most important things is know your enemy. And after you know your enemy, the second thing that you need to do is you need to know the battlefield. And if you know those two, it makes your job so much easier. And if you apply that to carp fishing, if we can understand what the lake is like and we can understand how the fish behave, then actually the rest of it is fairly simple.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the things I always say is the biggest problem is that we don't know what the problem is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
half the time we don't know what the problem is because we can't see it.
No,
But
that's
having
bang
dived
on.
so much, I see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, if you think what's 2 + 2?
Yeah.
Go on. What's
4.
2 + 2? 4. Simple.
Yeah.
What's X + 2?
Who knows? I couldn't tell
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
Yeah.
And until you know what X is, it's impossible.
Yeah, I think everyone sort of suffers with that certain amount of unknown stuff. Doesn't it? I mean, I've done it where I've cast out, been fairly confident, nothing's happened for a few hours, and I'm sort of thinking, have I still got bait on there? Is the rig tangled? Have I picked up some crap off the bottom? You always go through that, don't you? I think it gets to a point I haven't actually caught a carp since November, Rob, which I'm ashamed to say. Yeah, I'm on a massive
Have you been
blank.
much?
Not as much as I'd like to, which obviously doesn't help, but
yeah.
Still, And every time I go out, I'm doubting myself a lot now. I'm sort of thinking, have I got the right bait on? Have I got the right rig on? Am I doing this right? Am I doing that right? Am I presented right? I think you do start doubting yourself, don't you? But obviously, it might not necessarily be what I'm doing, but then it could well be. It's one of those. It's one of those.
You know, you touched on it earlier with one of my roles, which is England manager. And the job of a manager is to put the right people in the right place.
Yeah.
And then once you've got the right people in the right place, it's analysed that they're doing the right thing. And one of the key things of being able to analyse whether or not they're doing the right thing is actually all I'm doing is pattern spotting.
Right.
That's all I do. And I do that with my fishing as well. If I can spot a pattern, then I can make a bite happen quicker. There's no question that we're going to catch fish. Everybody that fishes at international standard can catch fish.
Yeah.
But what we need to do is catch more fish faster than everyone else.
Yeah.
So, you can. I put on the Underwater Wednesday thing that I do on my Facebook page. I put a PVA bag up the other day. I think it was 2 or 3 Wednesdays ago, and it was a PVA bag that sunk into silt. And a lot of people think PVA bags are the answer to everything. Chuck it in the weed, chuck it wherever you want. It's brilliant. And I took a bit of film footage of Mark Pitcher's actually fishing up at Baden Hall, where he cast a PVA bag into fairly deep silt. It was about 8-10 inches deep.
Right.
And the bag had landed on the silt, sunk in a little bit, and then eventually got sucked in. So when you looked at it, all you could see was, forgive my choice of words, but it was a little bit like a tea towel holder.
Yeah.
So, it had gone in. You could see the gap where it had gone in, and it carried on getting sucked in until there was virtually nothing showing. So I put that up. And my view is that if you're going to fish a solid bag, the best place to put it is on a solid bottom. Yeah. Because it presents so much better if it's on a hard bottom. And loads of people turned around and went, well, they'll always feed in the silt. They'll find it. They feed in the silt naturally. Where do you think bloodworm come from, et cetera, et cetera? You know what, guys, I get that. But if I stick a PVA bag on something that's easy to find and you stick it somewhere that it's hard to find, I bet you I get a bite quicker.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that.
It's common sense, isn't it, really? Yeah, when you put it like that. But like you say, a lot of people would assume PVA bag's down there, it's doing its thing. But, until you actually see it firsthand, you'd never know that, would you, really? So, yeah, it's a tough one. So how did it come about that you became the Carp Team England manager then?
I think England were in the doldrums a little bit. They'd had a reasonable run years ago. I think we've been in it, how long now? The World Championships has been running the thick end of 20-odd years, I think it is. And they'd had a reasonable run of success, and then they just changed, and it didn't get the recognition that it was worth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the previous managers just basically got fed up with it. They went in with a few ideas, it hadn't worked, and we basically we weren't very good.
Right.
Quite simply.
Hello.
Single bleep. Go on. There's a few rod moving in the edge,
right.
and I'm slacklining, which is I don't normally slackline, but because of how close I am and how deep it is, I'm having to slackline. But we can come to that later if you want. Yeah. But anyway, long and short of it is that they resigned, and the England management, Dick Clegg, who many anglers might know, one of the key match anglers in the world, he ran the England structure, and he got in touch and said, would you be interested in taking a role on? So we looked at what its what it entailed, which basically is you get to do an awful lot of travelling. You get to do very little fishing. I fish in practice and I fish in friendlies, but I don't fish. He said if you want, you can fish as player manager, but I think as a manager, you need to be able to see what's going on.
Right.
You can't see what's going on. You can't see the bigger picture if you're in the game. You need to stand and watch the game. So I don't get to fish. It takes probably, because we've got the ladies team now, it takes about 40 days of my time per year. And it's completely unpaid, and if anything, it costs us a reasonable amount of money to do it.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's a bit of a labour of love, and over the last few years, that's another thing that's taken away my own personal fishing time, really, because the 40 days is quite a long time not to go fishing.
Yeah, most definitely.
But it's an incredible role, one I'm massively honoured to do. I first got into competition fishing years ago. Myself and Simon Crowe won the first ever World Championships back in 1996.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a team event then; it was an individuals event. So we became individual world champs with that.
Yeah.
I then loved the idea of competition fishing so much that I brought the concept back to England and set the British Carp Angling Championships up.
Yeah.
So I've been around competition carp fishing and seen people develop as competition carp anglers for a very, very long time. Hence the reason that the England management squad said, look, would you be interested in taking over? So that's where the role came from.
Yeah.
I'm horrendously competitive. So that sometimes to the detriment of other things.
But there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, being the sport that it is, I think you've got to be competitive, and you can't not be and be a manager trying to G people up to go out there and do everything they can to bring the title back, so to speak.
Exactly. Well, you don't go into competition to take part. You're going to compete, and ideally, you want to compete at the upper end. So. That's one of the things of that. So I am frighteningly competitive, which is quite funny when I meet somebody else that's frighteningly competitive.
Yeah.
So we've got an amazing team of anglers. Competition carp fishing is very, very different from big fish angling. It's a completely different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
You need to be very aware of what's going on. You need to make it happen. You can't sit back and wait for it to happen. You've got to make it happen.
Yeah. That sort of brings me on to my next question, really. Because the majority of carp anglers that I know wouldn't even consider getting into competition fishing in that sort of sense. So do you find that the anglers that are getting involved with it, are they more sort of match anglers, as it were? Or are they out carp anglers that sort of get
they're all
brought over to the dark side, as it were?
Yeah, they're all competition carp anglers. They all like to compete. They're all naturally competitive anglers. Hence the reason that they enter competitions.
Yeah.
For me, one of the brilliant things about angling, but carp angling in particular, is it can be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
And you get some hardcore traditional carp anglers that don't like competition carp fishing, and they slag it off, which is an absolutely ridiculous thing to do.
Yeah.
Because if you don't want to do it, just don't do it. There is no problem. Just don't do it. You then get, competition carp anglers might look and think spending 3 weeks at a time on a hardcore water trying to catch one fish in 12 months is a waste of time. But you know what? They don't do it. So the best thing to do is do what you want to do. And, if you want a short session fish, short session fish. If you want to fish day tickets, fish day tickets. If you want to fish for what some people class as wrong uns, as long as they're not illegal, then you know what? Do it. Just ask yourself, are you enjoying what you do? And if you are, then do it. Yeah. And if you don't like it, don't do it. But more at the point, don't. I think one of the problems that carp fishing has, you got me off on one now.
That's all right. You carry on.
One of the things that intrigues me about carp anglers is why they feel the need to have a go at someone else's carp fishing. Because let's face it, anything that I catch has absolutely no effect whatsoever on you or your life. Does it? None.
No,
absolutely nothing.
None at all.
And anything that you catch has absolutely no effect on my life unless you start becoming a really, really good competition carp angler, in which case you're going to come on my radar and I'm going to watch it with a view to possibly getting you anything. But if you went out tomorrow and blanked, or you went out tomorrow and caught a new British record, my eyebrows might go up and I'd think, oh, there's a passing interest because it's a British record. But if you were caught 5 50-pounders tomorrow in the day, I'd say, well done, mate. And that's it. That's the level of, because it means absolutely nothing to most people.
Yeah.
So I don't know why people get het up about other people's carp fishing.
It's always the same. I find it on social media. Social media is great for certain things. As soon as you put a picture of a carp, a rig, anything, it's getting slated. Regardless, like you say, it could be a pristine 50-pound common. Someone will say, "Oh, scales are broken," or it's stuffed one, or you always get stupid comments no matter what you do. And I think that's half the problem with carp fish, especially on social media in particular. People will, newcomers will put questions up, say, "Oh, I've just tied my first rig. What do you think of that?" And they will get absolutely slated for it. And you think that's just not good for the sport, and it's just generally not a great thing to do.
If you see anybody slating anyone else, just as a little exercise, and if you're listening to this and you are one of the slaters, be a little bit careful. If you see somebody slating someone else, have a look at the profile and have a look at the last time they actually went fishing or caught fish. And I bet you it was a while ago, because people that go fishing and catch fish and actually are enjoying it and having quite a successful time generally don't tend to knock other people. Yeah. The majority of knockers are the ones that either don't go, and I'm not going to use the word armchair warriors or keyboard warriors or whatever, because that's very, very, it's used very widely. But an awful lot of the time, if you have a look at the people that are whinging, they don't go very often. And as a result, if you don't go very often, then you know what, your opinion isn't perhaps quite as relevant as you think it is.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems, in particular, carp anglers do seem to be the worst for it. I'm a member of a lot of groups on social media, and the carp ones are always the ones that get quite heated. I'm all for discussion, love a discussion.
Have you not been in the pike world?
Oh no, sorry, I have. Yeah, pike. That's another level as well. Actually, they're quite like that.
Pike anglers are incredible.
Yeah,
they really are incredible.
Yeah.
It's the wrong colour green, that pike.
Yeah.
So,
no, I know it's phenomenal.
Match anglers like a whinge. Pike anglers, I think, are probably the strongest. Barbel anglers are not far off carp anglers.
Yeah.
Pleasure anglers generally don't. The trout world can be a bit sniffy as well in places. I've started looking into that now. I was doing some underwater work with some flies the other day, looking at how they worked, and got some really, really interesting stuff there. And some of the fly anglers are the same.
Yeah,
so, I don't know what it is. It's just
anglers. I don't know. I think it's social media generally, mate. Like I say, it is good in some aspects, but there's just a lot of people on there that like to voice opinions that no one really cares about. To be honest, there's just no need to be like it.
Let's not give them the airtime and let's move on.
No. Anyway. So obviously on the bank of the TV program, not where you are now, obviously, but we'll get onto that in a bit. So where did the TV sort of aspect come into your life as well?
That's been going a long, long time. It started off in, I think it was 1997. After myself and Simon had won the World Cup, we got invited on to a show called Tight Lines that used to be on Sky Sports.
Yeah.
And back then it was presented by Bruno Brooks, the Radio 1 DJ, and Keith Arthur was the guest, and they used to get someone on as the studio guest.
Yeah.
So I was asked to go on there and got on well with the guys, and they found out that I was a solicitor by trade, and they went, "Oh, brilliant, do you know anything about fisheries law?" And I said, "Well, I know a little bit about it." And they went, "Right, come back on and we'll have you on as a guest." So I started going on as a guest of Tight Lines a little bit more, then started reporting on Fishermania because of the Sky Sports link, then got the British Carp Angling Championships covered, then started making British Carp Angling Championships programmes for them, because rather than it just being a report on Tight Lines, it then became an hour-long show in itself. Then spoke to them about having the first ever carp-only show. So, there've been lots of fishing programmes on TV, but I wanted to try and get a carp-only show on. And I spoke to them and we brought out the carp show.
Yeah.
And that would be, I can't even remember when it was now. It must be 20 years ago.
Right.
So the carp show was on, then that morphed into Extreme Carp, which was just the extreme ends. It could be big water, it could be small water. This is all old school.
Yeah.
15 to 20 years ago. Then I carried on working with Sky Sports, putting events on there. And then about 6 years ago, BT got in touch with me. And they said, would you be interested in coming over and talking to us about doing some programming with BT?
Yeah.
And one of the problems with sport channels is they're very football dominated.
Absolutely.
So Sky back then there was an awful lot of football. We'd film a reasonable amount of stuff through the course of the year, but it would end up going on Sky at the back end of the year, sort of November, December.
Yeah.
So if I was out doing the UK Champs as a prime example, one of the big match fishing competitions, we'd film it in May. It wouldn't get on telly till November.
Oh, wow.
So BT said, we'd be interested in you coming in and working with us. And I said, great, I will do, but we need to have a weekly show. And they went, yeah, no problem. And it was okay. I'd like it to be a prime time slot, ideally on a Monday night. And they went, okay.
Cool.
So it's fantastic. So for the last 5 years, we've been broadcasting at 9 o'clock on Monday nights.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is absolutely brilliant. And audience figures are really good. People love it. You know, we're not the same as Monster Carp with ITV4 figures. It's slightly different.
Yeah.
But we're getting very, very good figures. We've retained our slot, and it's a serious mixed angling show that covers all disciplines. We can be coarse, game, sea, carp. You know, you name it. We do all sorts of different things on there.
Absolutely. Personally, I actually really enjoy it for that reason alone. It is such a broad church. You know, you are covering everything. Obviously, Andy's well into his fluff chucking, and you are obviously the carp element. And then, like you say, you do everything in between. Cover all the big matches. The World Predator Classic, I think, was on a couple of weeks ago. Was
on last week? Yeah. I think this week is UK Champs, which is match fishing. Last week was the Predator Classic.
Yeah.
I would say probably the best adventure I've ever had in the UK from a fishing point of view last week, where we were fly fishing, but we did two things. We went and I was lock style trout fishing in Llyn in mid Wales, which I've never done before.
Yeah.
What that means basically is trout fishing from a boat.
Oh, okay.
Where you're not fishing on the surface, you're fishing below the water, effectively lure fishing for them. And then I got the dive gear on and we started looking at what the flies were like, how they behaved. And actually, a little bit of a first view. I don't know when this is coming out. I've spoken to one or two other people about it, but nobody in media yet. But we actually got takes from trout hitting flies both below the surface and on the surface live for the camera. Absolutely incredible. Never been done before in the UK.
Oh, fantastic.
So that was amazing. And then the following day, we didn't think that day could be topped, but the following day we climbed up the mountain next door to Snowdon and fished a lake that's over 2,000 feet high.
Wow.
And it took 4 hours to trek up there. Now you can imagine just walking up there is hard, but walking up with camera kit. I took a lure rod, I took a trout rod. The other guys took trout rods. I've got 2 sets of chest waders, 2 sets of boots, first aid kit, camera equipment, tripod, all these things. Cameraman's got his stuff as well. We've hacked 4 hours up the mountain to this absolutely amazing place, and caught trout that were originally stocked, I believe, in 1875.
Wow.
So, and nothing gets stocked. It doesn't go in or out. It's in there, and they've morphed. They've changed. They're like a purpley black colour.
Oh, wow.
You imagine leanies. You imagine the old original leanie strain. If there was a pool in England that had never been touched other than the original leanies in it, that's what this trout lake's like.
Wow. That's
and
phenomenal.
Going up and catching those, it was just incredible. And the one of the things that I'm trying to do at the moment is break the boundaries down between disciplines, because carp anglers look at fluff chuckers and think they're posh, and fluff chuckers look at carp anglers and think they're just louts that sit down in camp and drink beer, that there's no thought process going in, and match anglers aren't interested in fishing, they're only interested in money, and all of this rubbish. And one of the things, if you're a fly angler, what are you? Do you just fish for trout, or do you fish with the fly? Because if you fish with the fly, then actually catching carp on the fly is amazingly good fun. Catching perch on the fly is incredibly, different, and catching pike on the fly is fantastic. So, and equally, if you're a perch angler, have you tried the fly?
Yeah. Well, I actually, on the last episode, we had Dom Garnett on, and he's banging.
He's a good mixed all-rounder, isn't he?
Oh, is he ever? Yeah, he'll go for anything that swims with a fly by the sounds of it. And, it was really interesting. We touched on it previously last summer, I saw a chap at a local commercial water fly rod, and I kid you not, he was pulling carp in one after the other. Every cast he seemed to be hooking into one. You think, there's a lot to be said for fly fishing, because obviously a lot of these, it's a natural looking bait, isn't it, effectively? So a lot of fish are going to go for it.
I've started taking the fly rod when I'm surface fishing for carp, because when you fish for them, actually you get them feeding on the mixer, but actually when you cast to them, a lot of the time you can disturb them.
Yeah.
Whereas with a fly, you can be really, really, really finessey with your presentation.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic, dropping a fly on the front. So here's a question for everybody watching. If you caught a carp on the fly, would it count?
It would in my book, certainly.
No. I think a lot of people would say no, because if you caught it on a fly, you're not carp fishing. But if you're fishing for carp, then you're carp fishing. And I've had this discussion with a number of people, because fly anglers don't like trout caught on lures. It's like,
yeah, no.
So if you're, so where do you stand? Are you defining yourself by the fish, or are you defining yourself by the tactic that you use to catch the fish? Because if it's a tactic,
that's quite interesting. That is quite interesting, actually. I've never sort of looked at it like that. I have to say, if you're going out, like you say, to target perch, for example, and you caught something else, you caught a pike, for example, you'd still count it as a fish, wouldn't you? I mean, I would.
You would. But you would count it if you go out and catch a bream when you're fishing for carp, then it doesn't have the same meaning. But if you're fishing for bream, and you catch a bream, then it means more. But now, how do you fish? And let's look at perch as a prime example, because you can fish for perch on the float.
Yeah.
You can fish for perch on the ledger.
Yeah.
You can fish for perch with a lure, and you can fish for perch with a fly.
Yeah.
So if you're a float angler, do you count a perch caught on a lure?
Yeah, see, I would. If I'm targeting them, it's going down. It's going down as one. No matter how it's been caught, it's going down as one. Like you say, Bremer, another story. We won't get onto those today. I dislike them massively. But, there's a lot of people out there, I think, share that opinion. Eels as well. How do you feel about eel fishing, Rob?
I'm not a fan of eels.
No, and you get people that go out and actually fish for them on purpose, which I find odd.
Well, if you have a look at the sort of people that go out and fish for them on purpose, they probably are a little bit odd. So, sorry, eel anglers. I've got a few mates that are eel anglers, but they're a funny species. But let's have a look at salmon as a prime example. This is how hypocritical and crazy fishing can be sometimes. When carp spawn, or when they're getting ready for spawning, it is clearly the wrong thing to do to fish for them. You should absolutely leave them alone.
Yeah.
But you know what? As soon as you get a spring run of salmon, you're out like a shot thinking this is fantastic. There's springers around. Let's go salmon fishing or sea trout fishing. Where do you think the salmon and sea trout are going?
Yeah.
And why?
No, I do get that one. Yeah, that's a bit of another argument for another day, I think. Like you say, I don't touch carp when they're spawning sort of, well, they're quite early this year where I was. They seem to be sort of early May. But you leave them for a few weeks and let them have it. But like you say, the salmon anglers, they're straight out there, aren't they? But
they only really fish for them when they're running.
That's it. Yeah, that's the only time they can really get hold of them, I guess. It's not something I've ever tried.
Well, I was very interested. I've spoken to two people recently that fish for sea trout in the sea.
All right.
Now, I know the sea trout are in the sea because obviously the giveaway is a little bit in the name, but I didn't know that you could actually fish for them in the sea. But they go out to sea and then they hang around in various different places. And these guys have told me where they hang around. And this is why, because they go to certain pockets, a bit like the eels go off to Sargasso.
Yeah.
Sea trout go in, but they go to certain areas. And they go to areas around the UK. So you can actually find them in the UK and you can catch them in the sea.
Wow.
Which is really interesting. And one lad said he doesn't actually target sea trout in rivers anymore. He will only fish for them in the sea because when they're in the rivers, they're actually running to spawn.
That's interesting. So,
isn't it? That was a fact. I knew absolutely nothing. I never even thought about it.
No. Well, I've never given it any thought either. But So, did you know Andy before on the bank, or was it all you was sort of thrown together and hope that it worked kind of thing?
No, I knew him through Sky Sports because he was a reporter at Sky Sports.
Yeah.
His background is television, so he worked for Meridian TV, I think, a few years ago.
Yeah.
And then he worked as a reporter for Tight Lines. He's a lecturer at Solent University, so he lectures media studies down there.
Right.
But he's allowed out to carry on with his professional career effectively because it obviously adds an awful lot to what he does down there teaching his students.
Yeah.
So he worked for Sky Sports. I got to meet him through being a co-reporter on Tight Lines. He used to do all of the Fishermania reports.
Yeah.
So I knew he was into match fishing, even though, because he started off as a match angler before he turned into a fluff chucker.
Yeah.
So he was doing all of that. And then he was working with Tight Lines. I got asked to go to BT Sport, agreed to go, and left effectively Tight Lines, agreed to go, I think it was in the April. And would you believe it, Sky Sports cancelled Tight Lines that June.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they decided after Fishermania they were going to stop doing fishing.
Right.
So as soon as they did that, I'd spoken to Fordy briefly about what I was doing, and said as soon, when it became sort of so that that Tight Lines didn't exist, I said, well, do you want to come over and co-present with me?
Yeah.
So that was it. So he came over and joined in, and that was where it went from there.
And the rest is history, as they say.
And the rest is history, yes. We spend ages taking the mickey out of each other, but he's had a go at carp fishing a few times, and I've had a go at fly fishing now.
Most definitely. You've definitely got the chemistry there. Obviously, you've known each other a few years then, and it does show. You two do obviously get on quite well professionally, and you're quite friendly, I assume, outside of the filming world.
Yeah, this year's been really weird.
As it just,
it's been weird for everybody, really. And, from the back end of last year, probably from September onwards, I had a bit of a health wobble last year, unfortunately.
Right.
So as a result, that sort of took me out the game for a while back end of last year, and then sort of coming back into it this year. It was obviously it's just weird, isn't it? The whole COVID thing. So we've not been able to be as close.
No.
But you know what? One of the things that I really, really, really like about Fordy is that we work together. We're in quite a pressured situation when we go out and film.
Yeah.
And when you've got camera crews with you, there's a cost element to it, and there is a need to deliver. But we always just laugh. When you go out with somebody and all you do is laugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just such a good laugh working with him. Even when we're in pressure situations and it's difficult, we know when to be serious, but actually it's quite funny. And what we've always said to everybody watching on the bank, if we're good, believe us, we'll tell you we're good, because we're not always good.
Yeah.
But if we're crap, then guess what? You'll get to see that as well. It really will be what it is. We don't make anything up.
No.
If we have a hard time, you see it being hard. If we have an easy time, you'll see it being easy. If we're knocking the ball out of the park and knocking the plastic off the ball, we'll let you know about it. And if it's a real tough struggle, you'll see that too, and we'll probably rip each other about it as well.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I really enjoy the program, like I say, and I hope a lot more people do. And seeing sort of more and more fishing obviously the internet has taken over massively. A lot of people get everything online. They get their news, they get their entertainment online. So to have TV programs still being aired, I think it's fantastic. Like we mentioned, Monster Carp, obviously they're getting fantastic viewing figures, and I think that's great for the sport as well. I've been watching Paul Whitehouse, Bob Mortimer.
And Bob Mortimer.
Back on, and I think fishing really sort of needs that. I think because it's still kind of, I don't know how to say it. It's not a stigma, but a lot of people. When I first met my wife, I said, "Oh, I'm going to go fishing." She sort of envisaged old men sitting on, little stools by the bank drinking a flask of tea, which to a degree is true. I do take, but do you find that that sort of thing does help people get into fishing? They see it on telly and they sort of think, do you know
100%.
what?
100%. We've had a little bit of an image problem for a while because we are portrayed as exactly that. And if you look at a lot of the time when the non-angling public see us, sometimes it can be portrayed in dramas or things like that. And a lot of the time it's a bloke sat by another bloke moaning about his wife on the banks of a canal on a Sunday morning, and it's miserable, dreary, and wet.
Yeah.
But actually, we've not mentioned Robson Green. Now, Robson Green has done a massive amount for expanding people's horizons about fishing.
Yeah.
A lot of anglers don't like him. A lot of anglers don't think it's serious. But you know what? As far as the general public is concerned, he is absolute gold for us.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at a mate of mine as well, Jeremy Wade.
The legend that is.
Jeremy Wade. Yeah, Jeremy is an absolutely fantastic ambassador for the sport, and he's put fishing in front of an awful lot of people because, one of the drives, again, that I've got to try and get people taking fishing a little bit more seriously is that we need to look at what's going on below the surface. When you look at pollution, when you look at abstraction, when you look at all of the problems that we face, whether it's flooding, whether it's droughts, whether it's pollution, whether it's poaching, whatever these things, the public can relate to them a little bit more. And as anglers, we're the front line. We're the guardians of the water courses. People walk up and down the park with a dog and they look at the river and think it looks nice, but they haven't got a clue what's going on below the surface.
No.
And as anglers, we know before everyone else.
Yeah.
And if we can get that message that we're almost custodians of the river across, then people open up to it. What the lads at Monster Carp are doing, Ali Spoons and Dovey, is absolutely brilliant because they're bringing a fun element to fishing, and they're showing that it doesn't need to be the image that it is, and also how big the world is for fishing. We have a laugh. We're sort of slightly more fishing related as opposed to entertainment related.
Yeah.
So we all cater for different things. The competition things are very much sport reports.
Yeah, of course.
And with Paul and Bob in particular, they've just opened up a completely different view of fishing to a completely different audience. And, the amount of coverage that we've had in the Times, the fact that we're on mainstream TV, I can't remember when it was, about November last year, I think it was, I was asked to go on News at 10.
Wow.
To talk about fishing. This is ITV News at 10. It was the and finally story at the end, but it is about fishing and how good it is. And it's about women in sport. And, if you look at the headway that the girls have made, in particular, the female drive, I think, and the recruitment for more ladies to not just take up fishing, but actually celebrate fishing a bit more, because there was a reasonable amount of girls and ladies that used to fish, but it was almost seen as something that blokes did and the women just tagged along.
Yeah.
And when you look at the iconic female anglers of the moment, the likes of the Carp Team England ladies that have just opened up carp fishing to women participants so much more, the likes of Marina Gibson in the fly world, she is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Ambassadors like this. And I think as a sport, we as anglers have embraced women and girls coming into it so much better, so much faster, so much quicker than a lot of other sports.
Yeah.
They're a lot more accepted into it now. And that's tantamount to how great angling is as a sport.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a sport for everyone. I've been trying to get Marina on the show, actually. I've had a brief chat with her, and I'm trying to twist her arm into coming on. So hopefully we'll be able to talk about that, with her fairly soon. But like you say, everyone can enjoy fishing. I've taken my wife. She didn't enjoy it so much, but, can't win, can't have it all. But my kids love it. I've got a 4-year-old daughter, absolutely loves it. Got a 2-year-old boy. I take him occasionally, but he's just a whirlwind by the water. It's probably not safe to take him. So
he's a bit young yet, but
we kind of leave him at home for the best part. My 4-year-old absolutely loves it. She's asking me last week when she can go with me and Granddad again. And awesome. I think that's just great. You got to start them young, because, like you say, it's not just the sport aspect that they're getting; it's the love of nature. Because for me, that's what a lot of it is. I'm, like I said, I haven't caught a carp for a bloody long time now, but I'm not overly worried about it, to be honest, because I just like going to sit down there. I might, chuck a rod in the back of the car after work, go and sit there for a couple of hours and just sort of think, yeah, that's it. That's me done now. And just, it's the perfect way to unwind, I think. And, I think the more people that get that, the better it's going to be for the sport, obviously. Obviously, we touched on it. COVID-19 has just absolutely ruined this year for everyone. It goes without saying. How much has it affected your plans and your, filming schedule, Carp Team England stuff? It's just ruined everything, I suppose.
Massively. Life's a little bit like a pendulum, isn't it? That there are things that cause it to swing one way, and then there'll be a reaction, and things will cause it to swing the other way.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether that's fishing or work or what. The life is always changing and always swinging. And for a start, from Team England's point of view, the whole international calendar was cancelled.
Yeah.
So we were very disappointed because we bid to host the first ever Ladies World Championships this year, and we won it.
Right.
So that was supposed to take place actually last week.
Oh, wow.
But of course, everything was cancelled. The men's has been cancelled. The Home Nations has been cancelled. All of the float and feeder events has been cancelled.
Yeah.
British Carp Angling Championships cancelled. UK Carp Cup cancelled. Match this cancelled. So, a massive amount of big events have been cancelled. So as far as competition is concerned, I was out with Jamie Hughes today, and I said, what have you got to look forward to now then? And he said, well, there's only one more match left, one more big one. That's Parkdean. Other than that, everything's gone.
Wow.
So, and we've only really had Fishmania this year. So the competition side of things has been really, really difficult. The travel that has a big effect on me because I do a lot of overseas stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm normally in anything between 6 and 10 countries a year, either covering events or alternatively fishing myself or filming. Of course, that's gone.
Yeah.
So that makes things a lot more difficult. And there's limited amounts of time that you can watch how to tie a PVA bag, or let's go to linear and catch a 20-pounder or 20.
Yeah.
It's so as a program maker, one of the things that I want to do is I want to entertain people. I'd like to educate people, and I'd like to ideally inspire people.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the editorial requirement of stuff. Yes, we can churn stuff out, but it's quite nice to do things that people are either interested in or think, I'd quite like a go at that.
Yeah.
So it's clipped our wings a little bit and made life a lot harder. And the other thing is that we have a contract to provide a certain number of television programs, so we're on a weekly deadline.
Yeah.
Now, if we can't go out, we can't fish. If we can't fish, we can't film. And if we can't film, we can't make a program.
Yeah.
So, that makes it very hard.
Yeah, most definitely.
So there was one show in lockdown where actually I think I did the whole film from the garden.
Oh, wow. You got to do what you got to do. That's the thing, though, isn't it? You got to, needs must.
Yeah. We recapped a load of underwater stuff. I think I put a 10 or 15 minute piece together on underwater. We got a match fishing piece that someone else had filmed previously, and it hadn't been aired anywhere. And I ended up telling people how to re-spool your lines. So it's a bit. Oh, and we did. That was it. We did a Skype interview with Jamie Cook, the head of the Angling Trust.
Right.
So that was it. So the whole program was done from the living room.
Oh, wow.
Or the garden.
You've got to do what you got to do, mate, haven't you? Like I say,
Exactly.
There's a lot of people that are seriously struggling still with, the effect that the whole pandemic has had, and I did wonder really how tackle shops are going to cope with this. Because obviously, I think rod license, I did read the figures and I've lost them. I don't know what I've done with them, but rod license sales went up quite considerably this year, didn't they? I believe.
Yeah, they're 20 odd % up.
Yeah, which is a big
fantastic
chunk. So obviously there's more people fishing, but are those people going to tackle shops to actually get their stuff? Because I'm very much a believer in supporting my local tackle shop, and I think that everyone should really, because once they're gone, they're gone. I live down in Portsmouth, so we're quite near the sea. A lot of the tackle shops are obviously more geared towards sea fishing stuff, which is fine. No problem with that. But they're sort of one by one, they're just going, and they're not going to come back. And there's something about going in there and spending 50 quid at a time that, it's enjoyable in a way, but I don't think it's going to last, to be honest. The internet, again, has sort of killed it, I think.
It's a complex issue because actually, if you look at retail in general, it's a really tricky one. The high streets have been dying.
Yeah.
The hospitality industry is absolutely on its backside.
Yeah.
The majority of the time that people go to the high street, not necessarily to shop. You might go for essentials and you might go to Boots the chemist, but actually a lot of it will be a coffee or whatever. And it is a social thing. The Clothes shopping is slightly different because you want to try it on. But if you want to buy a washing machine, you might go to Curry's and have a look at one. But the first thing you do is check the price, and the second thing you do is check the internet.
Yeah.
And you find out if someone's got a cheaper one. It's just the way of the world, and we're our own worst enemies on it, because what we want is a deal. And there's nothing wrong with wanting a deal, but we've either got to want the deal, in which case we go to the wholesaler, or alternatively we support the local bloke, in which case you pay a little bit more because he's got overheads. And, that's how it is. Just touching on the COVID thing, as well, a few people have said to me, oh, yeah, we're all in the same boat on this, aren't we? And I completely disagree. We're not in the same boat at all. Everybody's in the same storm. But your boat might be very, very different to my boat.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to be respectful of where other people are, because, some people are having wonderful times where you look through social media and you see somebody is still furloughed on full pay, sitting there on the bank for the 6th week in a row, really enjoying themselves, and yet someone else has just been made redundant. They've worked all the way through. Yeah. They've not had the time off. And I won't call it enjoyment factor, but there's a lot of people who had a lot of time off where they didn't have to do anything and they got paid.
Yeah.
And other people have had to work all the way through, got to the end of it, and then eventually it's a case of actually, no, now you're made redundant, you've lost your job.
Yeah.
So, we have to be very, very mindful of what's happening. On the whole, as far as fishing is concerned, fishing will win out of this, but there's winners and losers.
Yeah.
To talk about your tackle shops, obviously I'm very heavily connected within the trade anyway.
Yeah.
And what happened originally was everybody thought it was terrible because nobody could sell anything. And then a few clever people decided to go online, in which case there was a bit of online movement. Then fishing came back and there was a big rush. Yeah. So as a result, the fishing tackle shops have sold an awful lot of tackle. The manufacturers think it's great because they're supplying the shops who are now selling out of stuff. And if you go into the majority of shops at the moment, they're relatively bare. There's not a lot in there.
Yeah, very true.
And the tackle shops think it's great. We're up on last year's figures. And the manufacturers think it's great. We're up on last year's figures. But actually, there's nothing in the bank. Right. Because when you've sold everything, you've sold everything.
Yeah.
You can't sell any more than everything. So until you can resupply, which is where the problem is in China now, because China shut down, and more or less just as China was starting to reopen, England shut down, there'll be a 6 to 9 month delay in getting everything in.
Wow.
So as a result, when, the shops have sold everything now, they think it's great, but come winter when everyone stops going, there's going to be a big hit. And then come spring next year when people are going again, but there still isn't the kit in, that might cause a problem.
Yeah,
so
most definitely.
It's like a snake traffic jam almost, isn't it? That eventually it will catch up with itself.
Yeah, that's it.
It's sort of like that. So, where it is benefiting one or two businesses, if you speak to Fox, they've sold out of virtually everything.
Yeah.
If you speak to Corda, they've sold out of virtually everything. If you try and reorder from Nash, they've got difficulty supplying. Not difficulties, but they're you have to wait. But a lot of lads on the syndicate that I fish are using I've forgotten the name of it. What's the Nashy pole thing?
I don't know what it's called. Yeah, but I know it's a bushwhacker or something silly like that. That's it. Yeah.
And they've been waiting for extra poles because you get a certain number of poles with it, but ideally you want to be able to buy more. And they've tried to get bushwhackers for they've been waiting 4 or 5 months.
Wow.
So because they're in that much in demand, they can't actually get the resupply, and a load came in, and because they're so popular, they've all gone.
Yeah.
So literally when they landed, they've all sold. So now you've got to wait for the next supply. So, it's one of these that the key products are quite hard to get hold of because they just sell really quickly. But what it's actually doing is it's buoying the second-hand market.
Yeah.
Because the second-hand market now is quite strong.
Yeah, I mean, for example, I've seen the Corda crimp tool.
Yeah,
that seems to come up quite often on Facebook. Oh, has anyone got one for sale or whatever? You look on eBay and people are selling them for 60 quid. And I think they're about 10, 15 quid from the shop. And you think, but people are buying them, which I find just bizarre. But, some people do work in mysterious ways, it has to be said. So with regards to your travelling, getting overseas quite a lot for your fishing, where's your go-to place if you could fish anywhere outside of the UK?
I love Romania.
Oh, okay.
Romania is a fantastic venue. Me and Crowe went out there first in '99.
Yeah.
So we've been going out there a long time. Before even Romanians were fishing, we were out there fishing for carp with Reduta.
Yeah.
And then there's some fantastic lakes over there. But Romanian people are just absolute diamonds. Really, really, really good people. I've got some good mates in Croatia, Slovenia. I love Eastern Europe. So, France is good. It's convenient.
Yeah.
Germany's nice as well. There's some lovely gravel pits there. But for me, Eastern Europe, I love the best.
Yeah.
So anyway, normally it would be that way, partly because, fishing's a funny thing. When you start, you want to catch something. And then when you've caught something, you want to catch lots of things. And when you've caught lots of things, you want to catch big things.
Yeah.
And then you want to catch more things than your mate. And then you want to catch more things than everyone else.
Yeah.
And then you want to go out and catch really big things.
Yeah.
And then you come through the journey, actually, and it becomes more important to go to nice places. And then actually it becomes more important to go with nice people.
Yeah.
And actually, for me now, I've sort of done full journey on what I want to do. And, don't get me wrong, I love all my aspects of it. And sometimes I really want to go and target a big fish.
Yeah.
And I'll go out and I'll try and catch a big fish. And sometimes I just want to get a bite. And I'll go fishing for an hour. And the idea is that I want to try and catch a carp. Don't care how big it is. If it's £8, it works.
Yeah. That's fair enough.
I take my lad. He's 13 years old. He loves it.
Yeah, good stuff.
And I love fishing with my friends. So actually the where or the what for, to be honest, isn't quite as important as it used to be, because now it's more the who with and where it is.
Yeah, that sounds perfectly reasonable to me. I mean, Croatia is sort of on my to-do list. I keep seeing things about it online, and I do fancy it. Looks just like a fantastic country anyway, and obviously the fishing looks absolutely out of this world. So that is definitely one on the list as and when we can get over there. Hopefully it won't be...
One thing I'd say, if you're a budding traveller, one of the things I'd say that makes it even more special is try and go somewhere first, or get somewhere early, because Shumbar is a prime example. Shumbar is the one in Croatia that's really most people are looking at the moment. There's another one called Zajaki or Zaprosic, if they know about it. Now, I see people, we're going to Zaprosic, Zajaki, it's the new place. Knew about it 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Shumbar, me and Steve Briggs fished it 20 years ago, I think, maybe a little bit more than that. It had just done its first 40-pound fish.
Oh, wow.
So, it's producing now them to there was an 88 out, I think, yesterday. So, it's got some massive fish in it now. We fished it 20 years ago. If you can be aware of these things or go somewhere early on in the career, it's really good. And for me, I don't know, we all fish differently, but I don't get as much enjoyment about jumping onto a conveyor belt and being just someone else that's catching someone else from the same lake that everyone else is caught from. Yeah. So it's probably why I don't fish circuit waters. I'm not bothered with, Dave from Bluebell's a lovely fish. I'd quite like to catch that. But when you look at the bluebell fish, when you look at the linear fish, when you look at the rainbow fish, when you look at all of these places, for me, leaves me not cold, but no interest. Yeah. Because it's just someone else catching another fish. And it's I think with rainbow as a prime example, there used to be a fish in there a few years ago called Rolls Royce. It was about 12, 14 years ago. And it was the world record at the time. Okay. And it lived under a tree in peg 19. No. It only ever caught from under the tree in peg 19. And it probably used to get caught once a month.
All right.
Now, Rainbow books up 12 months, 18 months in advance. Okay. So you and I booked Rainbow in October. I've got it for the first 2 weeks. You've got it for the second 2 weeks. We've got peg 19. Yeah. One of us two is going to catch it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So stuff like that, I'd rather go out and I'd rather fish a river and catch a 40-pounder.
Yeah.
Than absolutely. Go and catch that. But that said, when you look at people that fish rainbow, they really enjoy it. No problem whatsoever. Not knocking rainbow. Yeah. Different, people look at me and go, why on earth do you fish match venues for carp? I fish viaduct quite a lot. And viaduct is a match fishery. It's absolutely fantastic in the winter, and a lot of match fisheries are really, really good in the winter. They stop carping that big because they like the float going under, and then they throw pellets at them and they get to that big, and then that big. And, at the moment, you can go to viaduct and you can catch 10 doubles in a day and a chance of a 20 or two.
Yeah.
Which is really, really good winter fishing. And I thoroughly enjoy going down there with a 13-year-old who loves seeing the buzzer sounding.
Yeah.
And I'd take that over,
Yeah.
a 40-pound conveyor belt carp.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Yeah, like you say, especially if your lad's enjoying the fishing as well, you can't ask for much more than that, really, can you?
No,
I mean,
exactly.
You want him to enjoy himself as well. So, have you ever actually fished in the US, at all?
Yes.
You have?
Yeah. I fished quite a bit in the US in various different places. Yeah.
Yeah, because we had Mark Jackson. He's a bit of a character. I'm not sure if you would have come across him. Big fella, absolutely bang into his carp fishing. And obviously in the States, carp fishing isn't as well received as it is perhaps, in the UK and the rest of Europe. And, a lot of Americans do consider carp to be a trash fish, as I'd call them. Yeah. And they're not interested in catching them. And I think it's quite an untapped kind of bit of the sport over there. Because, when we had him on, he was talking about catching sort of like 34, 35 pound river carp. And that, to me, that's a proper fish. And you think, is it worth going over there and trying a campaign somewhere?
It's fantastic. Logistically, it's difficult.
Right.
Getting your kit over there is difficult. The other thing is that night fishing in America is illegal.
Oh, is it?
Canada, I think it's one of them. It used to be. Let me have a think. I think it was legal in Canada, but you were only allowed to use one rod. Okay. It was illegal in America, but you can use 2 rods.
Okay.
So that's why they have tournaments. So it was where do you go and fish? The St. Lawrence was the bit that really made America famous as far as carp fishing is concerned.
Yeah.
And the St. Lawrence River runs from Lake Ontario to the Atlantic Ocean, and it forms the border between America and Canada.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely stuffed with carp.
Right.
Loads and loads and loads of big carp in it. And they've never really grown. 20 years ago, they were 20s with a good chance of a 30.
Yeah.
Now, they're 20s with a good chance of a 30. There's a possibility of catching 40-pounder, but they've grown as big as they are because naturally that's how big those carp are.
Yeah.
But you can go over and you can catch 20 in a day if you want.
Yeah.
And, it used to be really, really good fun. There was an old expat called Bernie Haynes who set up a fishing holiday company up there, and he was the one that started English anglers going over there to fish for them.
Okay.
And as a result, as soon as some of the American guys saw what he was doing, they thought, wow, this is quite good.
Yeah.
So the whole American scene set up around New York State.
Right.
Now, there's carp all over New York State. New York State and Texas, I think, are probably the 2 key areas where carp fishing is popular. Houston. There's also an awful lot in Washington as well. So there's a lot more there. And then, there's been some very big mirrors caught on the West Coast now. San Francisco area.
Yeah.
Really, really, really pretty fish. And it's produced fish over 60 pound now, but they're very few and far between. However, the lakes are stunning.
Yeah.
They are just amazing, the waters they've got.
Yeah, it just surprises me, how their attitudes differ from ours completely. They're just not interested in catching them. And, the fish care aspect is a whole nother level. We, spoke about it with Mark, and they're just, like you say, they're trash fish. They don't care if they go back in the water alive, dead, or indifferent,
Well, let's flip it, and let's talk about bass. Largemouth and smallmouth bass. Yeah. I mean, we don't fish for them in the UK.
Yeah.
So they are here. They're not really fished for that much in Europe as well. We prefer zander and perch and pike to smallmouth bass. Smallmouth bass are a ridiculous fish. They're only little. They don't really fight that hard. It's all marketing, media, and $1 million competitions. That's what's made bass fishing. But actually, the Americans love it, and we don't.
Yeah.
So you should never ever knock other people's style of fishing. The fact that they don't like carp, look at the Australians. They don't like carp at all.
No.
Whereas the South Africans love them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just odd how it can vary so much country to country. Do you find, majority of European countries are, I know certainly Eastern European countries do eat carp, which is fine. I've got no problem
Yep.
with that. But do you find the fish care for those that are pleasure anglers in that sort of part of the world, do they still take good care of the fish, or is it just, it's
Look,
just a fish
a
to
lot
them?
a lot of pleasure anglers are eating for the table, or they're fishing for the table.
Yeah.
And there's one particular lake that I go to in just outside Bucharest. There's 2 lakes there. And the top one is the Specimen Carp Lake, where everybody is equally as good, if not better than us. They've got mats, they've got bivvies, they've got proper rods, they've got the full setup. They know exactly what they're doing. They're immensely good at it. They put an awful lot of English carp anglers to shame. And then when you go on the bottom lake, it's like a put and take trout lake.
All right.
So they stock loads of 2, 3, 4 kilo fish in there, and there's barbecues set up all the way around the lake. The family go down on a Sunday, chuck the rods out. As soon as they catch one, they smash it on the head and shove it in the barbecue.
Right.
So, who are we to say that they can't do that? Because actually, can you imagine someone coming here and saying, well, hang on a second, you're not allowed to take any trout?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say I've got no issue with it. I just wondered if there was, the pleasure anglers do treat it in the same sort of manner that we do. Obviously, I do realise that a lot of them do end up on the table, and that's fine. I'm not sure I'd want to eat one personally, but I can't say I've ever tried it.
No, I think it depends on whether they're a carp angler, a catch and release carp angler, or a no-kill carp angler, or a table angler. And if they're a table angler, then you know what, carp care doesn't really matter because they're going to end up on.
Well, no, that's it. Yeah.
As long as they dispatch them quickly, then
that's all you can ask, really, isn't it? Yeah, that's all you can ask.
But you see, what we're finding now is that there's more and more and more catch and release because people are realising how much carp are worth when they're big. Yeah. And what sort of revenue they can generate from it. So as a result, the carp angling business is huge.
Yeah.
And, outside of the carp world, and this really, really, it makes me grumpy sometimes, where people say, oh, there's too many carp anglers around. If it wasn't for people fishing for carp, angling wouldn't be in the strong position it's in.
No.
Make no mistake about that. When you look at how many rod licenses are sold to carp anglers, how big the carp angling movement is across Europe, how big the carp angling movement is getting across the world, how much revenue is put back into industry, how much revenue is put back into the local communities as a result of carp fishing. All of these old fuddy-duddies that are saying, well, people shouldn't carp fish, they really should start off by putting kids on a box and let them catch a roach with a whip. You know what? We don't live 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. We live now.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, what we need to do is we need to get these people, whether they're kids, whether they're adults, whoever they are, we need to get them fishing, educate them properly in the way of doing what they're doing. And if they get fed up with it, people say, oh, well, they'll burn out. They'll still be an angler. Yeah. And people have come in, started carp fishing and ended up going trout fishing or ended up going perch fishing or barbel fishing or doing whatever because they like angling.
Yeah.
So, yes, it would be lovely to have the romantic view that we can bring people through their watercraft apprenticeship. But are you going to turn around and tell a 13-year-old kid who wants to go carp fishing that he's not allowed to fish unless he goes sits on a box?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Let people do what they want. It's like saying, if someone's into cycling, they can only ride a tricycle first. They're not allowed a mountain bike. You've got to learn to ride on your tricycle and stay with that for 3 years.
Yeah.
What a load of rubbish. Let's just get people fishing.
Yeah, if they want to do it, let them carry on, like you say.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with newcomers, obviously, you see a lot of people might make mistakes on Facebook and they're getting shot down for it instead of being educated. What do you find the most common sort of issue newcomers have when they come into fishing of any variety, not necessarily carp fishing, but what's the biggest mistake you'd say people make?
I think that not getting coaching.
Yeah.
Is probably then you need to go with somebody that knows what they do. If you want to walk into Sports Direct and buy a ball, having never played football before, it doesn't take the brains of Einstein to work out that you stick it on the floor and kick it.
Yeah.
Because actually it's quite a natural thing to do. Now, if you buy a cricket bat and a ball, it doesn't take the brains of Einstein to work out that you need 2 people, one to throw the ball and the other one to hit the ball.
Yeah.
And then if you get a fishing set, whatever that fishing set might be from Go Outdoors, suddenly you're set with a whole host of problems.
Yeah.
How do you tie a hook on?
Yeah.
How do you cast? Where do you cast? How do you get it out the tree? What happens when the line breaks? What bait do you use? How do you put the bait on the hook?
Yeah.
Is the hook the right size? Is the float the right size? Why have I bought this shit piece of kit that I really shouldn't have bought? that doesn't actually work for what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So, I think one of the biggest things that we should do is we should encourage either coaching or alternatively lessons. There's a lake near me in Bristol called Bitterwell Lake, and they've just started off a coaching scheme with kids. And Saturday mornings they get between 80 and 25 kids going along, and they go for an hour. And their adult stays with them, and the coaches just wander up and down teaching the parents how to teach the kids.
Yeah,
it's absolutely brilliant. Really, really, really good. Not only that, they also do hour-long coaching and tackle hire, so it's 25 quid. And this isn't a plug for them, but it's a really, really interesting model that for 25 quid, you can take your kid along somewhere and have an hour with all of the equipment you need.
Yeah.
And a coach showing you exactly what to do. That's a winner in my eyes.
No, I'd agree with that. Now, going back to last year again, actually, I was fishing with my daughter and my father-in-law, only sort of pulling out a little roach perch, just float fishing with my nipper sort of thing. And a chap come up to me and he said, "Excuse me, can you help me tie a hook on?" Now, his boy wanted to go fishing. The dad had never been fishing in his life. Didn't know where to start. Like you say, he'd gone to wherever, Sports Direct, whatever, Argos, and he'd got this kit. Yep. He had everything he needed, net, mat, the whole thing, but he didn't know how to tie a hook on. Yeah, so I sort of took a quarter of an hour out of my time, just said, "Look, this is what you got to do, roughly. Give us a shout if you need me." Which, fantastic that he was taking his kid fishing, no problem with that at all. But he had no idea, not being horrible, but he just had no idea. And you think that sort of scheme that you were talking about there, that would be ideal for a lot of people, I think. So a lot of kids do want to get out and try it, but if their parents don't fish, it's a non-starter, really, isn't it, for a lot of them?
Absolutely, and here lies one of the key problems. That's as you know, I'm heavily involved in the promotion of angling. I'm actually an angling ambassador. I'm an ambassador for the Angling Trust, which is a national governing body. And the reason I'm involved with the Angling Trust is I want to try and get some influence within the organisation there to try and get them going in the right direction. And we had a change of leader at the Angling Trust. There's a new CEO, a guy called Jamie Cook, he's an angler. Not only is he an angler, but he's one of us. The previous guy that was there was a salmon angler. No disrespect, but I don't think that he was in touch with boots on the ground grassroots angling. The new guy absolutely is, and as a result, the whole trust attitude has changed towards what's important and how we should recruit people to the sport, how we should keep them going, and what we should do. And he sort of gets it. Now, one of the problems that I think that we've got is that there is a missing generation of people that take kids fishing. So let's look at the kids are the future of the sport thing that everybody says. And on the face of it, that's probably right. But if you scratch a little bit deeper and think about it, actually they're not. Because unless they can go, they can't carry on the sport. Now, who's going to take them?
Yeah.
And if little Johnny comes home from school and says, "Dad, I fancy going fishing," and Dad's never been fishing, doesn't know anything about fishing, hasn't got any interest in fishing, it might be, "Sorry, son, can't help you." It might be, "What on earth do you want to do that for?" It might be, "Wouldn't know where to start, pal. Go and ask someone else." Or it might be, "I tell you what, why don't we go out on a push bike instead?"
Yeah.
And we almost, rather than targeting the juniors, we need a two-pronged approach where we target the juniors and we provide the parents with the opportunity. It's not just dads. Traditionally, people have come in because either father or grandfather has taught them, but actually mums now and grands are really, really, really important, particularly when you look at the social state of family units these days in comparison with times gone by. When you look at who's working and who isn't, when you look at the whole package, I think there are certain things that we can do now that could offer, so many more opportunities for parents to come in with their kids and enjoy fishing together with them. Let's not target kids without targeting the parents. Let's target them both together. Or alternatively, if we're targeting the kids, make sure they've got a really, really good facility to get into it, that the parents are happy that they can go to it.
Yeah.
So, one of the problems I think, I've taught my lad to fish, and when I say I've taught him to fish, I have actually taught him to fish. I've not just gone fishing with him, I've taught him various different ways of fishing.
Yeah.
And what I found, the one individual thing, and he started when he was 6, the one individual, he fished before, but he started his lessons when he was 6. And the one individual thing, we used to go on a Wednesday night after school in the summer, and on the way home from school, I'd give him a quid, we'd go in the tackle shop, he'd get his maggots. He would have to buy them, and he would have £1. Now, £1 worth of maggots are perfect, because if you bait correctly with them, they're gone in an hour.
Yeah.
Now, an hour is the absolute perfect time to set the rods up for the child to be excited with it, to have a little bit of a go, to start catching a few, to get the swing of it, and then catch a few, and then go home.
Yeah.
Because the maggots have run out, so we're off.
Yeah.
It was only ever an hour. We wouldn't fish for an hour and 1 minute. We wouldn't fish for 59 minutes. We'd fish for exactly an hour. If he wasn't catching anything, it's not so long that he gets really bored.
Yeah.
And if he was catching things, we'd cut him off, and he'd desperate to go back again.
Yeah. No, that's quite interesting, actually. I do like the idea of that. I mean, I took my nephew probably a couple of years ago now, when he was about 8, 9, something like that.
Yeah.
And that was a similar sort of thing. He'd asked his mum, "Oh, can you take me fishing?" His mum's like, "Oh, I'm not dealing with worms, not dealing with slimy fish, blah, blah, blah." Parents are separated, as you mentioned there, kind of thing. Family units have changed a lot. So I took him fishing, dropped him home. He loved it. Within 6 months, his dad had actually gone out and bought his own kit, and now they go together quite regularly. And his dad is now a big-time carp angler. He goes fishing more than I do. And you think 2 years ago, it wasn't on his radar. So it sort of works the other way in some respects. You get kids into it, and the parents follow.
That's exactly the point. Interestingly, I had one the other way around the other day. That a mate of mine from school, he's ex-Navy, he's a bit of an action man.
Yeah.
He's been doing a bit of paddleboarding, and we meet up sort of probably once or twice a year, and he's got a paddleboard. And he said, "You fancy coming paddleboarding?" Well, I borrowed one off a mate, and I said, "I'll come paddleboarding as long as I can bring 2 rods."
Yeah.
So it was during the Take a Friend fishing campaign.
Yeah.
So I said, "You teach me to paddleboard, I'll teach you to fish." And he's like, "Right, fine, fair enough." And I took an ice rod, literally the 18 inches long ice fishing rods. Took those, little bit of drop shot and kit. We went on the river. There's a free stretch just outside Bath. So we went on that, had a little trundle around. Happy days. He caught a couple of perch. He went, "My lads would love this."
Yeah.
So I think one's 11, the other's 10. So we took them out. All 3 of them now, they've all got setups. Awesome. They go regularly. Every time they take the paddleboard, they take the rods as well. They went down to the coast. They went to, I think it was Devon on holiday. They've been wrasse fishing. They've caught perch, pike, wrasse.
Yeah. Wow.
Absolutely love it. And that was one really easy little bit of effort.
Yeah. Didn't take a lot, did it? No, fantastic. No, and it's so important to keep people coming into the sport, like you say, just to keep it ticking over, really. I do wonder if a lot of the rod license sales this year were down to people just wanting to get out. Like you say, everyone's furloughed, or a lot of people are furloughed, and they think, "What can we do? Try it." Do you think a lot of them will return next year, or do you think it's going to be a bit of a flash in the pan thing for a few people?
Look, there's a lot of government insight data into why people go fishing and why they don't go fishing. And if we look at why they don't go fishing, first and foremost, there are a number of what they call barriers to participation. And barrier number 1 is time.
Yeah.
Barrier number 2 is money. Barrier number 3 is somewhere to go. Barrier number 4 is someone to go with. And then there's all sorts of other social barriers further down. Yeah. But if you look at the big 4, time, money, where, and then with somebody.
Yeah.
So time, always a difficult one. Time is always precious to most people, but I do say this to everybody: nobody's got any more time or any less time than anyone else. It's not about time. We bundle it up and package it at time. It's not time, it's priority.
Yeah.
You haven't got a second more or a second less than me. We've got exactly the same time. However, your priorities might be different to mine, which mean that you can't go, or you think you can't go.
Yeah.
So let's have a look at, firstly, your priority, and secondly, I flip it completely, And when I was working with Sport England, my flip completely on it. The job with Sport England was try and get people fishing more often. So it wasn't to encourage new people into the sport. It was to encourage people that are already in the sport to go more often, because this is one of the ways that you can keep them going. If you keep going, you're less likely to give up.
Yeah.
So if, the minute that you don't go, the chance is you're not going to go again. But if it's in your mind to go, then you'll keep going.
Yeah.
And this is why it's quite important to catch. And this is where I think coaching is another important thing, because I'm off on a bit of a tangent now, but you've got another little hobby horse of mine. If you look at, let's say you go twice, you can't fish in the week, you're a weekend angler and you go twice a month.
Yeah.
And half the time you go, you blank, and half the time you don't blank.
Yeah.
So you've gone the first time, it's 60 quid for your ticket, 40 quid for your bits and bobs that you come out the tackle shop and think, where did that 40 quid go? I've not got anything, but it's 40 quid gone.
Yeah, that's it.
Then you've got some, you might take some beer, you might have a curry with the boys or whatever, but suddenly you're looking down the barrel of a sort of 130, 140 quid a weekend.
Yeah.
Which, if you're doing that twice, that's suddenly becoming quite expensive if you're day ticket fishing.
Yeah.
So now if you blank the first time and you get home and the missus says, how'd you get on? Did you enjoy it? And you go, yeah, I didn't catch anything. My mate had 4, but I didn't catch anything. Then you've got the banter, right? See, it happens. There we go.
Yeah.
The next time you go, you're desperate to catch, but you know what? You blank again. And suddenly you're 280 quid and 2 weekends out of your time. And then you think, well, it's the next weekend I'm going. And the missus says, oh, you're going again? I hope you're going to catch something this time. And then you think, well, you know what? Chelsea are playing at home. I could go and watch them. Or, it's raining. I don't really fancy it, or whatever.
Yeah.
If you're successful, if you're catching, and you're having a few. I'm not talking about kicking the arse out of it and having 20 a session, because then you don't need to go because you caught too many. But if you're on the ball and you're having a few, then the chances are your kit's ready to go. So you'll pick it up and you'll go quickly. You might go for an evening, you might go for a day. You catch it more, you keep going. Yeah. So it's really important to keep people catching, because I think they go more often if they're on it. So, and then, you look at, we touched on time. The other end of the spectrum is that whilst we haven't got more or less time than each other, let's make that fishing session shorter. And this is what I did with Sport England. It was a job in the winter. Well, let's promote drop shot fishing.
Yeah.
Because actually you can go drop shot fishing for an hour, whereas you might need 10 hours to carp fish. You need 4 hours for a match, plus your prep time, plus your setup time, plus blah, blah, blah. So a match is a day.
Yeah.
You can go lure fishing or fly fishing for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
So you can get your fishing fix really, really quickly. What about floater fishing in the summer? What about stalking?
Yeah.
As carp anglers, actually, I've probably caught more fish going for an hour than I have going for 3 days.
Yeah.
So, if you think about it, because when you're there in an hour, you're walking around, you'll find where the fish are, you make a bit of an effort, you might bait up a couple of times beforehand, you'll spot one, go in, catch it, happy days. Alternatively, you'll start, get the floaters out, go for an hour or two floater fishing. Bingo, really, really good way of catching fish quickly.
Most definitely.
Whereas, chuck the rods out for the night. You if you're doing an overnight, probably you're looking at the thick end of 12 to 16 hours.
Yeah.
You might not catch one, and it's a quick overnighter.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know what you mean. It's using your time wisely, isn't it? And I'm quite guilty of that. I work full time. My missus works during the evenings and during the week. So from Tuesday to Saturday, she's working in the evening. So we only see each other Sunday, which is not a bad thing. So Sundays are generally taken up with family time. So I sort of get the odd Saturday morning. I might be able to go out. If she's got a weekend off, I might be able to go out overnight. But like you say about the drop shotting, for example, I've got myself a little drop shot rod, always bagged up and ready to go. And if I fancy it after work, I chuck that in the back of the cart and I'm gone for an hour, 2 hours, whatever I can spare. And, if you're having a good day on the drop shot, you can just pull them out and pull them out.
Well, we had a little thing with a few mates where, and again, be careful you're not poaching. Ideally, go to places that you want to. But lunchtime, especially if you're on the road, I've always got the drop shot stuff in the car with me. There's always a drop shot rod and a small landing net. And literally, when I say a small pack of kit, it's literally, the little
that's
like
pretty
tackle
much what I've
box,
got.
tackle
Yeah,
box.
yeah,
Just that fits in the pocket. It doesn't take up any space. It's always there. The great thing about both trout fishing and light lure fishing, drop shotting if you want, or jigging, whatever you want to call it, you don't have to go to the tackle shop. Your bait's always ready. You don't have to prep anything. It's really easy to carry around.
yeah.
And literally, I've turned up in a suit. I've got a set of over trousers and wellies.
Fantastic.
And literally, take the suit jacket off, put the jacket on over the top, over trousers over the top of my suit trousers, wellies on instead of shoes. I can have half an hour anywhere. We did a little thing, me and a few mates, about 15 casts either at lunchtime or on the way home.
Yeah.
And if you spot a piece of water that you can gain access to, 15 casts, no more than that.
Yeah.
Chances are, if you're going to catch one, you'll probably have it first or second cast.
Yeah.
If there's a few around, you might catch a few. And if you haven't caught one by 15 chucks, you're not going to get one.
Yeah. That sounds reasonable enough. But
and literally, with drop shot fishing, we did 15 because you can actually, it takes longer to get your clothes on and off, as in, the overtrousers and everything, than it does to actually fish.
Yeah.
So half an hour, it'll be 5 to 10 minutes to get dressed, 15 minutes fishing because it's 15 chucks a minute ago, and then you're off. And you can have a little fishing fix. It's really, really good fun, actually, because you just caught one.
Yeah, no, it is quality. Cause, like I said, being used to being a carp angler and lugging loads of stuff around for an overnight. You got the kettle, you got the stove, you got your bait, you got your bivvy, you got just stuff that you that you use, obviously. But from going from that sort of setup to a rod and a net, and like you say, a pocket full of stuff, it was an eye opener for me. And I have sort of gone to the dark side with the lure fishing. I have to say, still trying for carp, obviously, but it's better use of my time. It almost feels like you mentioned. It's if I've got a couple of hours, I'm better off trying to go after perch than sitting there and hoping for a carp.
I'd rather have angling in your mind and you going for 15 minutes every now and again as a perch angler.
Yeah.
Than you thinking, you know what, I haven't got time for this. I'm going to flog my kit.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the dark end of it, isn't it? Realistically, you've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. Sorry to look down the doom and gloom, but if your missus is doing the job she's doing, you're doing the job that you're doing. You need to see each other some days.
Yeah, you're
knackered for your carp fishing unless she's on holiday, so you're not going to get much.
No, that's it.
And the risk then is like, well, I can't go. I might as well not do it.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of what I fall into with the blanking thing. So I'm going on a Saturday morning, and I'll get home at about 3, and it's just not enough time in some instances. I might get lucky, but of late it hasn't been the case. But it is what it is. It's called fishing, not catching. So
take the surface kit or go somewhere slightly easier and just catch a few. Find a commercial. There's bound to be a commercial down in Pompey somewhere.
Yeah, there is one around somewhere. I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get on the club for a little while, actually. There's a few club waters around here, but the waiting list is phenomenal because everyone started fishing, obviously.
Yeah.
But, we'll get on there. So what have you got lined up then, Rob? Obviously, you're out fishing at the moment. Are you working tomorrow? Are you filming tomorrow? Or what's going on now?
I'm filming tomorrow, yeah. I'm filming tomorrow. Would you believe I'm filming... I'm targeting double-figure bream tomorrow.
Wow.
I know you said it. You said earlier that you don't like bream. So it's... I do... This is a weird one. I am without any shadow of doubt a carp angler.
Yeah.
I've been a carp angler for a long, long time. And I'm an angler first and foremost because I do fish for everything, but I am a carp angler.
Yeah.
And if I have a choice and time, then I will go carp fishing. However, every year I try and target other species at least once. So, for example, I'll have a day or a night for tench.
Yeah.
I'll have a day or a night for chub. For barbel. I'll have a day in the winter for chub. I'll have a day in the winter for grayling. I'll have a day usually in the autumn, sometimes in the summer, but usually in the autumn for bream.
Okay.
I'm having a day back end of the autumn for roach. I want to catch a 2-pound river roach.
Yeah, fair play.
But there's a reason. It's not just a case of let's go tenching. It's a case of, right, let's go and try and catch something or prove something with it. And with the tension earlier in the year, what I wanted to do was prove to Fordy, and we film it as well.
Yeah.
I wanted to prove to Fordy that if you carp fish for everything, it's by far and away the most successful way of doing it.
Yeah.
I'm not talking 3-pound test curve rods, but all of this lift method float rubbish, sitting there with a misty dawn and a deer stalker on, smoking a pipe, going, here, isn't it lovely? You know what? Scale your kit down. Get yourself 2.25 test curve rods, 2 5,000 spool reels, put some 6-pound line on it, and carp fish for them. Because you'll catch so much more, and actually they fight just as hard.
Yeah, most definitely.
You know, so basically with the tench, I did an evening and a night carp fishing for tench.
Yeah.
And then in the morning at dawn, I binned the carp rods and I got the lift method out and I float fished for them with the mist coming off the water. And it was just after they'd spawned. We couldn't get out, obviously, just before they'd spawned.
Yeah.
But I had 4 over 6, 5 over 5, and 4 4s. 2 of them came on the float and all the rest came on the carp kit.
There you go. That's obviously the way to fish for things, isn't it? It's meant to be. I mean, if you're specimen bream fishing, like the bream that I'm played with are sort of, you know, skimmers, a little bit bigger potentially. But obviously, if you're going for real dustbin lid size bream, well, I think that's excusable. If you're specimen fishing, that's a different kettle of fish, so to speak.
I'm specially fishing for them. The target is we you know I want to catch a double for the camera.
Yeah.
So that's the target. Secretly, I've got it in my head that I want to catch one bigger than 14 pound because I think big bream are an incredible creature. You know, when you look at a big bream, it's weird.
Yeah.
They sort of, you know, when they're little, they're just snotty things.
Absolutely.
Until they get to sort of 6-7 pound, and then between sort of 6 or 7 and 12 pound, they're quite impressive. Yeah. But then as soon as they're bigger than 12, 13 pounds, suddenly they're just a different animal.
Yeah.
So the target is I'm doing exactly the same as I did with the tench. Basically, I'm going to do 2 rods. One of them is going to be on a cage feeder with ground bait and corn, and the other one's going to be boilie and either PVA bags or sticks. And I'm going to put the carp method against the traditional bream method. Yeah. And find out which one's the most productive.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Sounds quite an interesting comparison, actually. Yeah. So, other than that, what else have you got planned for the year? Obviously, I suppose most things for you are on hold, are they?
No, we're flat out at the moment. So filming as we go. So yeah, today was diving, match fishing stuff. Tomorrow and tomorrow night is bream. Yeah. On Thursday and Thursday night, I'm carp fishing, and then I'm diving again briefly on Friday. Hopefully next week I've got an appointment with a 3-pound perch.
Nice.
So it's on the big reservoirs, the perch is starting to group up now. Yeah. And you know, at this time of year, just before it gets too cold, as soon as it starts to drop, although it might have been put back with this warm weather that we've got, but as soon as we start to lose light a little bit, the bait fish tend to ball up around the harbours. Yeah. And it's really weird. They do it every year on a number of different reservoirs, whether it's Chew or whether it's Llandegfedd or whether it's you know, some of the Oxford ones. They go to the same places and the perch follow them in. Yeah. And they just gorge themselves stupid. And whilst it's not shooting fish in a bucket, it takes location out of the way, because if you know where they are in a 500-acre lake, it's a damn sight easier than trying to find them later on. Yeah, most definitely. And you know, they're stocking up for winter, so it'd be lovely to try and catch a 3-pound perch this autumn, and then after that, I don't know. It's flat out because we're really busy filming for On the Bank series. That's we're competitions at the moment. I think next week is the Orvis Fly Fishing Saltwater Festival. Yeah, that was just down the road from me, actually. I was gutted I couldn't be part of that. It did look good fun, actually. Yeah, it was hard, but it was a good event. I didn't go myself. Fordy went on that one.
Of course he did. Yeah,
that was a good event. Yeah, and then we've got an autumn special coming up in a couple of weeks.
Oh, okay.
Talking about all sorts of things. You know, not just carp. There's a carp section in it. There's going to be a little bit of underwater in that carp session, talking about how the differences between summer and autumn, what happens with weed when it dies back, colour changes, light differences, how bait is I think at this time of year we can go off vegetables, and now we're coming up to boilie time.
Yeah.
And if you know, spotting particle and everything through the summer is great, but actually now is the time until November to really, well, possibly even December, to really thump the bait in.
Right.
So, you know,
Yeah.
get if you've got time, feed.
Yeah, definitely.
So you'd be amazed how much they eat.
Well, that's how they get to the size they do, I suppose, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Well, I think we've just about covered everything, Rob. We have been chatting for about an
Fantastic.
hour and a half, so I think
really?
that's it. Yeah, that's it. So I shall let you carry on, and I wish you the very best with your session. I do hope that it goes your way, and
Happy
hopefully
days.
we'll be able to chat again soon. But for now,
Yeah, no
thank you
problem.
very much, Rob. Cheers.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.